Excellent!
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Paul's Hardware. Today, I'm talking to Austin. How's it going, Austin?
Pretty good, pretty good. We've been shooting all day, and time to talk some graphics cards.
Yeah, it's been a very long day. It's been a very long weekend. So before we jump into the topic of today's video, let's talk about, first off, you've been here in LA for a few days now.
A few days, pretty much all weekend long, shooting a rap video.
Yeah. Hardcore, like gangster rap. They needed to bring Austin in.
Fanboy rap.
Kind of give it more of that thug, kind of style for that.
You guys know my reputation, like
exactly.
I'm
dangerous. If you don't believe me, watch the video on Kyle's channel.
Yeah, that was.
I think that might give you a better idea of what Austin's like when the cameras are off. But
yeah.
So he did that. Guys, check out the fanboy raps that Lou from Unbox Therapy did, because I think it's going to be pretty fantastic. We haven't seen the video yet at this point, but I've seen.
It's not even done at this point, but by the time this video goes live, it'll probably be live. Yeah. YouTube.com/unboxtherapy.
And I know it's going to be epic.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Just from what I've seen so far. So check that out. But today we're talking a little bit about graphics cards, because that's what my channel's about, hardware.
Right.
And
right.
I invited Austin over here to check out my pad and kind of some of the things I have set up here, trying to do videos and all that kind of stuff. And he saw what I've been working on just recently, which is a bunch of video card testing with the 4K monitor that's right here. But we have this right here. So this is a 290X, Radeon R9 290X. And this is water cooled.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you, right? So there's been a couple, water cooling on graphics cards. It's been a thing for a while, right?
You could get,
but it was kind of more of a specialty thing. Like, you usually need a loop and this and that. But with the all-in-one CPU coolers being a big thing these days, it's like, well, do we need it for graphics cards?
And this is one solution. There's other solutions out there. There's DIY solutions that have been bounced around and stuff. This is a solution from NZXT that they made. It's called the Kraken G10. And if you guys have been watching my channel, you're probably somewhat familiar with it. But this unit itself is like $30 for just this part of it. The loop, the water cooling loop part of it here is separate, but they made it compatible with Asetek coolers. So if you have a CPU cooler that's an Asetek style one that you have that's maybe a year or two old, and you want to transition that over and use it on your graphics card, you can, and it's really not that much money if you don't.
Of course. I mean, you said $30.
$30, yeah, for the Kraken G10, and then whatever.
The fan and the base and the backplate.
Yeah, so it's the fan, the backplate, the frame, and then the backplate for the graphics.
That's really not bad at all.
Not bad at all if you already have a closed loop liquid cooler. But if you need to buy the cooler, then it brings up to more like $100. And then it gets into more like...
Still though, that's really not... That's pretty reasonable. So let me ask you a question. So you've been doing some testing. You have it with a 290X. So how much more performance, headroom are you able to get as far as overclocking with this? Do you think it's worth it, or...
Well, that's a good question. Because when it comes down to how much something is worth... for me, where my mind goes immediately is price to performance. Because for me, I mean, people see me working with really high-end computer hardware all the time, but I'm really more of a price to performance guy. I don't spend a whole lot of money on my personal system. I tend to be somewhat frugal there. I got a house, a mortgage, all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to water cooling, it's always struck me as kind of a high-end niche thing. And it's only something that, if you're really enthusiastic about PCs and you really want to, go the extra mile, and it's something you do to get more performance. So for this card in particular, out of the box, with the stock cooler on it, I got about a 7% overclock.
Okay.
With this configuration right here, with two cards, because I've tested two cards and single card, with the 2-card configuration, I got up to about 15%, about 15.5%. So a nice boost. And then with the single card, I think I'm doing more. Actually, I totally forgot what I'm doing. 17.5%.
Okay. So that's pretty significant.
It's pretty significant. When it comes down to a performance numbers, though, it's you're talking about several frames per second, maybe somewhere in the 4 to 10 frames per second range, depending on the game you're playing and whether you're using anti-aliasing and all that kind of stuff.
But it's not just the performance, though. You're also getting rid of the stock cooler. I'm sure it's running much, much cooler than the 95 degrees that Hawaii usually does.
Yeah, and this is also a use case scenario that I felt was very appropriate for this card, because it's a 290X. They're meant to run at 95 degrees Celsius, which is hotter than some people are comfortable a component in their system running, even if AMD says that's totally cool. So in this particular instance, it's now running at 52 degrees
and
max,
that's a big difference.
Even overclocked.
Yeah.
So way, way, way cooler on the GPU. which is very nice. And it shows how much more effective water cooling is than traditional air cooling. It's physics. The water is much better at taking that heat, absorbing it, transferring it away, and dispersing it out through the radiator. So for me, though, it still strikes me as a niche thing. Okay. I mean, that's kind of what that's what I keep coming back to, because honestly, for the performance that I get here with this configuration, I could probably go with a custom designed R9 290X. That might cost $10 to $25 more than a stock 290X.
Yeah.
And get close to the same performance. Not the same, and it's still going to be running hot and that sort of thing. So,
but it's a lot less hassle. Let me ask you a question. How difficult was it for you to actually do this install? Was it a big deal to take it all apart, or do you think it's something that you could do in a few minutes, not a big deal? Was that a major barrier for you?
Not a major barrier, because I mean, taking hardware apart is something that I just enjoy, and I'll do if something is sitting there, I'll be like, hey,
what's inside here?
Yeah,
let's find out.
Disassembling and stuff. I mean, it is a little bit more manual labor, it takes that, and it does require some know-how, and some people are not as familiar to do something like removing a stock cooler. There's lots of screws on there. You have to kind of remove it,
taking off these warranty seals, kind of getting into some uncharted territory here.
Yeah, so when people have asked me in the past about water cooling, I've always said, look, if you've already bought the top end graphics card, if you're running a 290X or if you're running a GTX 780 Ti, and you want more performance on top of that, then you can water cool and you can boost up your performance. But the amount of money you're going to be investing is not going to be proportional to the performance you get just buying a card out of the box. At the same time, there's no way to get that top level performance without water cooling. So if you want best of the best,
you gotta go water.
Then you gotta go water cooling. So it's not practical for everyone, but for anyone who really wants to sort of push their hardware as hard as far as it can go, then it's definitely become a much more accessible solution. Yeah, and that's what I'm liking. What I've seen lately that I think I really like is water cooling. In years past has been something that it seems like a lot more difficult to get into, but now you have stuff like, say, the SwiftTech H220, which is also available as the Cooler Master Glacier 240L.
240L, yeah.
That number. Which are closed-loop CPU coolers, but they're also expandable. You can remove the liquid, you can add components to them. Take stuff like that. Also stuff like the NZXT Kraken G10 right here, which lets you take an existing cooler and really add it on there very simply. It makes it a lot more accessible for people.
It's like a full water cooling loop without all the hassles. Just like a boom, 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 you're done. You don't have to go deal with the whole pump, the whole deal. It's just pretty much all right off the shelf components that you're able to just throw in there.
It's a lot easier. And then the other thing is, I feel like if you're talking about a closed loop cooler like this one, I feel like it's much better used to cool the GPU.
Yeah, that's a great point. How much compared to a decent air cooler and a water cooler are you getting on the CPU? It's not a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, if you for the CPU, the baseline is always like the Cooler Master Hyper 212.
Yeah, of course.
If you can buy a Hyper 212 for $30, how much more money are you willing to pay for a couple degrees
and
cooler?
It's not a huge difference. Whereas you're talking going from 95 to 45, 50 degrees. That's a major difference. Even if it's not a huge deal, it's not going to kill the card, but that's a significant difference in the performance, or rather in the temperature of what you're running, just like in your case. That's just not a giant heater that's just blowing, exhausting tons and tons of heat all over.
Anytime you can take that heat and move it somewhere else and push it out of the case and get away from the rest of your components, you could even argue that might extend the lifespan of all of the components in your case, because heat over time is always going to cause components to fail. So
yeah, of course,
it is definitely a much more compelling proposition right now. I think it's a lot more accessible now than it has been in the past. And specifically talking about the Kraken G10, if you already have an all-in-one Asetek cooler,
it's not a big deal,
and you're not satisfied with your card's performance, $30 and drop that in there, and you get such a huge performance, and it makes it really fun to play with the benchmark or play with overclocking. That's one thing I will say over the past few days working with this configuration. Just doing the overclock, I'm like, oh,
you're not limited.
How high can I move those sliders?
Exactly. I mean, you can crank it as high as your imagination allow,
or until you start to see artifacting or your system locks up. But that's what
or the imagination. I'm gonna go with that one. Just your imagination.
I like that. That's much more positive and future looking. But so there it is. A quick discussion about water cooling right now, and definitely something that I know a lot of folks out there might be interested. So if you guys are interested in water cooling, let us know what you think of it down in the comments section. Because whether you're talking about something that's a little bit more simple, a little bit more accessible, like something like the Kraken G10 and an all-in-one, or going full bore,
going all the way,
custom loop, water cooled everything,
CPU,
GPU, and everything, all that water cooling in there. Which is something that I have not done much in the past.
Neither have I.
And I'm going to be doing it soon.
Ooh.
Because it's just, I feel like I'm at that
point.
Exclusive
right here, guys.
I got to do the water cooling. I got to do a custom loop.
Air's just not cutting it.
Air's not cutting it. I just, I gotta maintain legitimacy there. So
there you go.
Cool. But thank you guys for watching this video. Austin, thank you for coming out here.
Oh yeah, of course.
And stopping by here. And
I will never turn down an opportunity to talk about graphics card.
I won't either.
And there's our problem.
and that Mexican food is pretty good too. Huh?
Mexican food was great. The mints.
We have delicious mints.
The mints were really good too.
We had some nice Mexican food for dinner. But on that note, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you all next time.